it's amazing. There's a technical aspect that, as you mentioned, there's also the social aspect. Like, basically, you can talk about anything that you like. So why not? Yeah.
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 Yeah. I agree. It's at first it can be a little expensive to get all the gear and get everything set up after that, but you don't need top of the line gear to do it. You can do it. There's people who have made it big that record just the audio or video on your phone these days and the different programs. And it's so there's different editing programs that make it so easy that the barrier to entry for a podcast is so low. So if it's something you enjoy, who cares if you're getting as big of an audience? If you're having fun with
Yeah.
it, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, yeah, that's the right mindset. That's something that I tell to myself all the time. Like, as long as it's fun, I will keep doing. And it's been what,
Yeah.
about 2 years, and I just keeps getting more fun. So, what can I say? Let's talk about musicals for a second.
Yes.
Before going live, we mentioned the Shrek musical. So,
Yes.
what? I didn't even know there was a Shrek musical.
So I remembered seeing in passing when it first came out because it was on way and they filmed it and it was on Netflix for a while, filmed version of it. But I had never watched it. I didn't know much about it. And so we have in my town, there's a theater that often hosts Broadway national tours. So Broadway, the main place in New York, the big place where all the musicals are trying to get. They'll have their tours that go on that with some kind of larger cast and they're that level of talent that will go tour the country. And so my theater venue, they have season tickets they can do. And last year, Shrek the musical was one on there. And it was one that I wasn't as excited about, partially because I hadn't watched Shrek growing up. Like all my friends had, they were
What?
big fans. I watched it for the first time like 3 years ago. And I thought it was good. I thought it was good, but like I was a little past the target audience. So I wasn't sure going into musical what I was gonna think about it. But I loved it. Like I was pleasantly surprised. This was a revamped tour that they did at I think it was actually the beginning of this year. And so I got lucky that our town was the second one in the tour. And so that's my most popular video on YouTube because I reviewed it after it came out and talked about it from like a fresh perspective because I wasn't familiar with the Broadway one before. I hadn't seen that version because there were some songs that were cut, some ones that were changed. The production was completely changed as well and kind of toned back. At the creators of the original Broadway show were the ones that did it to kind of make it a little more accessible and for touring. And I loved it and it just took off. There were some of the actors and performers from the show that shared it on their pages, that were commenting on the YouTube and reached out. It was just a really cool experience. And that was the big one that, and I had a lot of fun with. A lot of people came at me too. A lot of people were not happy with the revamped version of the Shrek tour because they toned it back. It did look a little bit more like a high school production, like the costuming and the set design was more scaled back. And people who were expecting like the Broadway level caliber were a little disappointed with that. But the actors and everyone in the show was fantastic, and so I loved it. It
Okay,
was a
so
good time.
there was a Broadway Shrek the musical that happens in the past, and then it was so successful that they decided to come up with the revamp and tour around the country. Did I get this correctly?
Yeah, so they
Okay.
do tours, even if ones are still running. A lot of times they do tours so that people who aren't able to go to New York and see it there can still see kind of that level of talent in their own city or within a few hours, which is a really cool concept, and they're what they're doing there. But the creator of Shrek, they kind of rewrote some scenes, took out some songs, changed some staging, so they scaled it back on this new tour that they did. So it was a different kind of, even though the bones were the same, it was still a different show than was on Broadway. So I think a lot of people were curious to hear like what the changes were and what that show was like. And so I got lucky with being one of the first reviews out there. And so the algorithm picked it up and it took off.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Shrek. Like, it became basically Shrek became a saint in the past few years, man. Like, I don't even know what to say. I think saint is the best description of it. Well, I think first it became a meme, right? Because the movie is very good. How come you never watched Shrek growing up?
So I grew up very like conservative. My parents thought there was too much crude humor in it. So I wasn't allowed to watch growing up. That's why I didn't get to see it growing up. Because they previewed it and they thought there was too much crude humor. They're afraid I was going to go around pretending to be farting in the swamp, I think.
Yeah, I understand. And if you watch like Shrek 3, and I think there's even 4, they tone it down a little bit. The crude humor.
Yeah, I went. So I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I had some friends that they couldn't believe that I'd never seen them. And they're like, we have all the movies on Blu-ray here, borrow them. And so I watched all. I think there's 4 total, or maybe there's 3 that are Shrek, and then there's a couple of the Puss in Boots ones. There's a number of them. But I binge watched all of them in a weekend. And I thought they were entertaining, but I just didn't have that connection to them like I would have, I think, if I grew up on them and had watched them.
Yeah, of course. Whenever you see something growing up, there's this emotional connection. But don't worry, you don't need to wait too long. In 2026, apparently Shrek 5 is coming out, so you already caught up, which is good.
Go, perfect.
I know there's even a Shrek rave that exists now. It's insane the love people have for this ogre, but it's fun. I think it's fun. So the musical is good. Would you recommend it? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would. I had a lot of fun with it. I think they've even made changes when they were on the tour because there was a lot of like pushback. So the actor with Shrek had green face paint on, and then the ogre, like an ogre headband, and that was it. I mean, he had the costume too, but facial wise. And then later on in the tour, I think there was a lot of pushback and kind of complaints about that level, and saying that it seemed like they weren't giving a full production for what tickets cost on this tour. And they did a thing with like the full Shrek bald cap with the thing, and so they did increase the production a little bit as the tour went further on. I think I was saying it was like a month or 2 in that they started changing that, but I always appreciate that too, when you start with something and then you get feedback from people and then you adjust. That's what you have to do in life sometimes too. Like, you're going one way, and then if you get some constructive criticism and you're open to that and you're open to hearing what people think you could do to improve, or how you could do it better, if it's something that you can do without compromising your vision, your morals, and what you're going for, then that's something you should be open to.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, that's great to hear that they're doing that. But I'm gonna be honest, depending on the movie or the play, some actors, they're so good, they're so, I don't know, they have something, they have the sparkle, right, that you just see the character that they're playing. You just forget that they are playing someone else. My example, the one that I have in mind, I think I brought it up already on the podcast, is Michael Fassbender on the movie Steve Jobs. Like, he doesn't resemble anything like Steve Jobs. Of course not. Like, they look completely different physically, but his acting is so on point, is so good. Like, 1 minute into the movie, I'm watching Steve Jobs. I'm not watching Michael Fassbender, you know? So I guess some people just have it. I don't know how this translates on plays. I haven't been a lot to plays. The last one that I watched was... and I do love them, but the problem is it's hard to travel, right? They normally take place in big cities, in capitals. The last one that I watched was it was a musical, ABBA the music. ABBA the musical. It's
Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia. Oh, dude, so good. Have you seen it?
Yeah. I haven't seen it live, but I've seen the movie of it, and I like ABBA's music, and so I think Mamma Mia is such a fun musical in general. And I like the second movie too. The second movie was pretty good. They're
movies, right? I never watched the movies.
Yeah. and that's one that I don't remember, because sometimes there's a weird thing with musicals where sometimes it'll be the movie first and then they turn it into a Broadway play, like an actual musical in the theater. And then other times it's a Broadway play or a musical there in the theater, and then it gets